Welcome back, Weirds and Weeboos, to another mid-season update. I have been playing the game since this month, as I said I'd come back to it, but I haven't really made any videos except, returning to the free-to-play series, but that's kind of old footage. And that's mostly just because, to be honest, the meta that we have right now, it feels like I don't have that much room to experiment. I'm not complaining too much because it is a control meta and I kind of like that because, I like playing control decks, even though I am realizing now that I have spent most of my time playing more aggressive decks. It's just kind of whoever can stuff the most value in their deck, it seems at the moment, is what wins. And that means that, there's certain cards you just kind of have to run, and it kind of narrows down what you can do for decks. So what I've been climbing with is a Patience S-Chris deck, which is also a library deck, running Gerson Tomb and stuff like that, and Tombstone. When I've been trying to experiment with other decks, they've basically all fallen flat, because control's too good right now, and most of the stuff I was experimenting with was like leaning towards either mid-range or aggro, and it just was not the meta for that. It seems like the only aggressive deck that's doing well right now is a Kindness deck where you spam Tentacles and like trigger the 3 damage dust over and over and over, and combine that with charge spam with Temis to just go face and murder your opponent. Anyway.
Hey there, so it is 5:22 AM and I need to be quiet, but I also need to re-record this because I'm an idiot and knocked my mic and the audio is awful at the point where I talk about this card. So yeah, all they did was they give it +1 attack, probably not a very significant buff. Kind of hate it actually because I think this card's really annoying, but to be fair I didn't think it was good, so I do think it's kind of warranted. Probably used more in both mid-range and control now. But then again, I don't think I can come up with any decks right off the top of my head that really need this card, unless you're making a deck that works very heavily with Contamination, Asgore, Bacon Queen, that kind of thing, because then the meta bot would actually be quite helpful. Anyway, back to the normal bits of the video.
But yeah, as well as that, Laser Topper, will it come up if I look for it? No, it won't. There we go. Laser Topper is now a 1-cost 1/4. Huh. That's weird. It's not a 1-cost 2/2 anymore. That seems kind of bad, I'm not gonna lie, but I suppose maybe... I don't know, it's listed as a buff. The thing is, if it just dies at the end of the turn and heals 3 health to you, I swear that's a nerf, but it's listed as a buff, so... Again, I don't own Ultima Thrash yet. It's one of the few DTs I still need, so maybe if I was an Ultima Thrash player, I'd know what's up with that. I'm just going to have to move on with that one. Coffee Man. Small buff, got +1 attack. I like this. I already run this card in that Patience deck. I think it's a decent card already, but I sure won't complain about it getting +1 attack. I don't think it changes much though, because I don't think its attack is usually relevant. 5 is usually enough. Yeah, not much to say there. Carnival tent, though, this is kind of interesting to me, is going down to 6, which I'm fully on board with. This is a very interesting card because this genuinely has the potential to be a really good card, and I know that sounds like a meme, but like, it does. It's mostly just a problem of there's not much good enough to use with it. What you want to do with this card is you obviously want to get expensive generated spells in your hand, so you're getting massive gold discounts overall by casting them for free with this. And then you also want those generated spells to be the kind of cards that don't really need to be targeted to be good. Probably the best example of that is Justice's Undying Spears. That spell with this is really good. It costs 5, which isn't the most expensive, but still pretty pricey, and it obviously is going to summon 2 of them because it's generated. So essentially, you could, in theory, if you had 2 Undying Spears in your hand that are both generated, drop this, and you should get 12-16 worth of stats plus a 6-cost 4/4. So that would be 16... 20, yeah, 16-20 worth of stats for 6. Now you are losing 3 cards instead of 1 by doing that, but that's an enormous tempo play. Except the main problem with this card, at least it seems to me, is a lot of the best targets for it summon a lot of stuff onto the board, and you only got 4 board slots, and this is already taken up 1. So, although, just a moment, doesn't Integrity have, is it, it's not recruitment, what is it? I think it's actually got a balance change here. Mercenary hire. Is this good with that? Because this is a new one. Summon the cheapest non-DT monster from your deck, because, yeah, this doesn't have to be... This does not have to be targeted. Okay, it might be used with Mercenary hire, although I'm not sure how you could get the spell generated, unless maybe you use Bratty. Maybe you run a deck with lots of 5-cost spells that isn't Integrity, but then use Bratty to turn your 5-cost spells into Mercenary hire. Maybe. Either way, it's a lot of work to make this card work at the end of the day, but now it's down to 6. I could see it genuinely being used for some enormous tempo plays. I guess what I'm really thinking is, like, with the amount of healing there is right now, that's like very effective with Vitality, Buff Prosperity, the change to Good Food, which, yes, does make it heal less most of the time, but if you got in a very all-in shock kind of deck, it heals more. With all those changes, I could see a deck like this maybe, that even though it seems really memey, like finding its way into the meta, because those big tempo swings seem like the only way you could overwhelm a deck like that, even if they are really hard to set up or really kind of high-rolly. When you get those high rolls, it's like an actual situation where you can overcome all the taunt and healing. So yeah, maybe that's good. Hard to say though. Astigmatism has been changed to be a 6-cost 5/5 instead of a 7-cost 5/6. And I don't remember, let me remind myself, whenever this kills a monster, add a looks to your hand, magic deal 2 damage. I think that kind of sucks, to be honest, still. I mean, that's better, but, I'm not gonna lie, I never used this card. I forgot, although I did realize I just kind of forgot that, like, it changed, but I was still thinking off the top of my head it was the version where at the start of every turn, if there's still a monster opposite it, it just instantly kills it. Well, anyway, I don't have much to say about that. I don't think that changes anything. I think that card's probably still not used. Dog Harpy, 6-cost 5/5 now? Oh, it was a 5/4, yeah, now it's a 5/5. Silence at any monster. If it was already silenced, kill it instead. This is going to be interesting. It could be this card starts being run now. Because, obviously in the right situation this can be really good. You know, usually you don't see this card ever, not even because it's necessarily that bad, but more just that why would you run it when you could just run Scarf Mouse? Yeah, you can occasionally get the situation where there is already a silenced enemy monster, and you just want to kill it instead, and then in that situation it's good, but it's a very niche situation, so you'd need it to be very equal to the alternatives for it to be worthwhile. And it's not really. Nakarat Jester obviously has a very high attack value, and that means it can be used very aggressively, and obviously it costs 5, so if you're going second, you can drop it very early. And of course, Scarf Mouse is generally the silence of choice because it's the cheapest, and generally silence is something you want for as cheap as possible, even if it means you get less stats. But maybe, I think Scarf Mouse is still better than this, but like, we're getting closer to the point where you might be running Dog Harpy instead in some decks. Anyway, Hanging Plug has got a buff. Man, it's been a while since I've looked at plugs. 5-cost 3/4 instead of a 6-cost 3/5, and it's the same effect, isn't it? Now let me remind myself. Turn a plug in your hand into a Werewire that catches the original and gains its stat buffs, and with a Werewire again is a 4/3, I think it was, with haste. Yeah, 4/3 with haste. So yeah, you basically get a Werewire instead. If you have a plug in your hand that's hand buffed, you turn it instead into a Werewire. So it's a 5-cost 4/3 with haste, except it'll have the hand buff stuff that the original plug had, and then after it dies, the plug inside also has the hand buff, so you're getting multiple like things of value. Maybe I haven't checked all of these yet, but maybe this is actually good. If I haven't checked ahead yet, are there any more buffs to plugs? It doesn't look like it. If there were more buffs to plugs in this patch, I could see maybe now taking a look at the plug package, just because they are annoyingly sticky. And that might actually be good against this control meta. because, you know, you might actually be able to get units so sticky that the control decks run out of resources to be able to remove them eventually. But there's just so many good control resources right now that, I'm not sure. River Person got buffed to a 7 cost instead of an 8 cost. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this should have happened a long time ago. I don't know. I mean, I can kind of see the idea here that, like, oh yeah, you could draw so many cards off this and your opponent might not draw any. But it's just, it's so matchup dependent, and like, obviously you've got to be running a really cheap... I don't know, I feel like there's better things than River Person for hand refill a lot of the time. Again, we already have super efficient draw in this game. I think especially when it's cards like this, where the less cards you have, the more draw you get, it gets especially sketchy, because it's like, if it's not an artifact like Adrenaline is, which is part of the reason why I think Adrenaline is a bit underrated, even though I'm not saying it's a top tier artifact. If it's not an artifact, then it's really risky, because if you don't draw the card, you empty your entire hand and then you've just lost. You just have to top deck it or lose. Whereas if it's something 100% consistent, then it is extremely valuable, because, you know, you can guarantee you're going to be able to have that big refill. I don't know, I mean, it's a smart buff to do this to the card, because obviously it means that it's going to give more aggressive decks a bit of a chance to catch up with the currently dominant control decks, but yeah. I think this card still needs more. I think it's a bit weird as well that it's a relatively pricey card with a very high health stat line with an ability like this, because this seems, again, best for aggressive decks. Not that you couldn't use this aggressively, but, you know, this stat line feels more like it's supposed to be for mid-range. Then again, I suppose you could make a mid-range deck with small stuff, but you just draw so much that it's still, like, mid-range kind of value-wise, but bit weird. Worm. This is strange to look at. So now it's a 2 cost 2/2 instead of a 0 cost 0/2. Kind of sucks now, because we like have basically no 0 drops in the game now for Sad Bun Bun. We have Tiny Frogget and we have Clean Rabbit, which you can't even run in your deck. You get it from Rabbits. And then I think that's it. I think those are the only 0 costs in the game. So yeah, that sucks. As for the card itself, honestly, as vanilla as this looks, I think this is a really good card. Like, I'm just thinking, this is really good for mid-range, I think, because it's a 2 cost 2/2 haste, and I think that's really good just because it's not that bad stats, considering it can attack instantly. It's a very cheap ping, which you can just use to, like, you know, activate your, like, things like Asgore, or use it to finish off someone who's really close to dying. I think, especially with Patience, with the Hail artifact from Snow Warning, it going up to 3, even though it's just a little bump, you know, 3 is a very powerful breakpoint where a lot of cards die. So, yeah, I could see that working. Also, potentially hand buff. Like, okay, I'm not talking about this meta. I don't know. Unless there's a big meta change, I feel like this will not be worth it, because, you know, you're not going to outvalue other control decks. But say next month we're in a meta where it's more aggressive, but there's just enough room that you could make a good mid-range deck. I could see mid-range hand buff decks using this card and hand buffing it up, because, you know, the enormous amount of healing you would get from this, as well as board control combined, would be a great way to come back against aggro. But that is something very specifically you would want against aggro, and you wouldn't want it against control, because, you know, you're not going to outvalue them with just healing, especially because they're probably not going to deal that much damage to you early on. Petrified Monster has been changed from the version... The thing that it's summoned by that Perseverance spell that kills an enemy and summons them a Petrified Monster. So it now says disarm, turn and die, thus deal 2 damage to all allies. Oh, hang on. Okay, so I was given by someone in the Discord server the original version. Is it that... Yeah, okay. So the reason why they've made that change is because it used to be that if you killed this before the end of the turn, it wouldn't deal this. I wasn't sure off the top of my head if that was the case, but then, like, when I saw this, I'm like, actually, that seems a bit new. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't think this changes much. Obviously, it does buff the card that summons it, because, you know, you can't get around the damage anymore. But at the same time, it feels kind of weird, because I thought it was kind of on purpose they let you do that, because I thought, yeah, it adds an element of counterplay. But then again, I guess if your opponent's running a self-sacrifice deck, then you just kind of get screwed. You know, you don't really feel like you got outplayed, you feel like, oh, well, my card got countered just because of the deck the opponent's running, you know. Well, anyway, Traffic Car has been buffed. Very much warranted. How's it been buffed? Whenever this kills a monster, deal 1 damage to all enemy monsters. Oh, bruh. Oh, bruh. Oh, that is a bruh moment right there. So if you don't know what the difference is here, this used to be a self-damage synergy card. It used to do the exact same thing, but whenever it triggered its effect, it would deal 1 damage to you as well. Now don't get me wrong, obviously in a complete vacuum, this is a buff. It does make it so that the traffic car isn't dealing damage to yourself and it doesn't kill you. But my god, the self-damage archetype is in such a sorry state, and then they didn't need this. Like, this is one of the only, like, the few synergy cards they have, and they buffed it by taking away its self-damage synergy. I mean, I don't think this kills the card, but I don't think this card was good in the first place, so... Yeah. I don't think this really changes much. I think it just makes the self-damage deck even more sad. And Mr. Ruckus. I'm guessing this is... Okay, this is being buffed. Oh, just a small change to make it a... The first option doesn't set it to 4-3 anymore, it sets it to 3-3. I agree with that. For a second, when I actually saw Mr. Ruckus, just without thinking, I thought, oh, they're going to nerf it because it's a really good card. But they actually buffed it. But it's only a small buff, and I think that's a pretty reasonable buff, because I feel like, unless you had a deck which specifically had synergistic reasons to pick the 3-3 option, you would... Sorry, the 4-3 option, you would basically never pick the 4-3 option. Because 4-3 is still a decent amount of attack, and unless you had another card to combo it with, which, since it costs 8, you wouldn't always really have, it was usually better to just deal 3 damage. Now don't get me wrong, if you're running Mr. Ruckus, a lot of the times you were running it in decks that either could make both the switch effects happen so that you kill it straight away, or decks like, where I've seen it the most personally is Ultimate Heal decks, where you just get everyone enormous stats, but then you set them to 4-3, and then obviously it kills things really quickly. So yeah, I'm behind that buff overall. But I don't think it changes much. I think the card still stays good, but it doesn't really get much better. Just means sometimes the first option you'll pick a bit more often. Round Devices has been reworked, so that now, when you play it, it swaps the attack and health of all other monsters. Which is an interesting effect. Definitely weaker, though. It used to be support... paralyze an ally unit and give it candy. So like basically when you attack with one of your monsters, it would make it so that it couldn't attack the next turn, but as compensation it would give it candy so it could heal 3 health per turn. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that could be a downside, that whole can't attack for a turn because of the paralyze. But honestly, I kind of hated that version of Round Devices because most of the time it was way too slow. Most of the time it was garbage. But when you just so happen to kind of be a little bit ahead on the board and the opponent didn't know you had a Round Devices and you drop it down and now everything you played has candy and is self-healing and your opponent doesn't have something that can instantly kill them on the spot. And also with the taunt on this card especially, so, you know, you'd have to have enough gold to both kill the 5/3/6 taunt and then fully kill all the big units behind it without letting them heal. Yeah, this card just sometimes won you the game stupid hard if it was played at the wrong time for the opponent. And so I'm very much behind this change. Jar of Worms received a change as well. It makes sense they reworked it if they changed. Oh my god. Jar of Worms. 5 cost 3/4. Was it a 3/4 before? I don't think it was. Yeah, it used to be a 2/4. And it used to cost 4. Summon a Wern. If you spent golden spells on last turn, summon another. Huh. This seems decent. This seems like a decent card. I gotta say, I kind of am a bit sad that it's not an engine anymore, that you can't get like more per turn. I'd almost kind of prefer if this was like a shock effect, like magic summon a worm, shock summon a worm, something like that. I don't know. Unless that gets overpowered, but like, I don't know, is that really overpowered? Either way, this still seems like a decent card because you can kind of think of it, well, a decent card in the right deck, I guess. Because like you can think of it kind of like a 5-cost 5/6 that instantly deals 2 damage, but then obviously usually the worm won't attack while surviving. So it's more like a 5-cost 5/6 that has no text, or a 5-cost 3/4 that deals 2 damage and heals 2 health. And that second option isn't that great unless you got a really good situation for it. But then again, obviously that's assuming you don't get the condition met. If you get the condition met, then that's a 5-cost 7/6 in stats, or a 5-cost 3/4, deal 4 damage and heal 4 health. But yeah, I think the funniest thing about this is it seems to me like usually when you play this card, the best thing to do is not to attack with the worms, because I feel like unless you've got a 1-attack target that you can attack into without the worms dying, then it seems like usually the worms just, you know, they're better off just sitting there as tutus, like being a threat, than just instantly being wasted on 1 attack, even if it's instant. But I guess you got the option to attack straight away, you know, in some situations it'll help. Burning Snail's been changed as well. Burning Snail is a 1-cost 1/1 haste, magic, gain 1 attack for every other ally snail. Ah, yeah, I did think Burning Snail was a bit of a weird card beforehand. I do remember generally what it is, but let me just get up exactly what it was. It was like burning a card to get us another snail. Yeah, burn a card in your hand to draw a snail, 1-cost 2/1. So now, instead, it's, well, this. It's kind of like, you know, you fill the board with snails and you get up to 4 instant damage off of this. Still seems kind of weak. Don't get me wrong, 1-cost deal 4 damage is nice, but that's the best case scenario, and of course it can't go face. So, it looks like there's a lot of other changes for snails though, so I won't be too quick to call it. Blue snail, give a random 1-cost snail in your hand minus 1 cost, so it can only do it to 1-cost snails. Interesting. So it makes one of them free. And which one was this one before? Was it the haste one? Yeah, okay, I'm glad they changed that, because giving haste to ally snails was, like, actually useless. Like, actually, why? Because, like, you know, ally snails, they're all, like, 1/1s. Why do you want to give them haste? So this is definitely a much better ability for it. I still don't know if snails are good because of it, though. Snail Pen got buff, reworked, I mean. 3-cost 2/2 instead of 3-cost 2/3, but it itself is no longer a snail. Oh, and now it's magic. Add an exact copy of each 1-cost ally snail to your hand. Each base 1-cost ally snail to your hand. I'm guessing that's on the board. So okay, that's a hand refill card basically. Alright, let me see the rest of the snail cards before I say anything. Snail Trainer. 4-cost 3/3, need 2 or more ally snails, magic, add a Thundersnail to your hand. Only 2 or more. I don't remember what it was before, let me double check, but I think it was a higher, like, requirement than that. Draw a snail, magic, if you have 2 or more ally snails. Huh? I swear it used to be, like, something like, I don't know, so it was something like if you had 7 snails in your dust pile, or if you had a full board of snails, I thought. But okay, so yeah, and then Thundersnail. Actually, I should remind myself of exactly what Thundersnail is. I remember vaguely, like, summons. Oh wait, oh yeah, this has also been changed, hasn't it? Yeah, so just know, what was the original Thundersnail? Is it here? Yeah, it is. It's like summon all dead. Yeah, summon all dead ally 1-cost snails and trigger their magic effects. Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought. And now Thundersnail has been buffed, but we'll get to that in a second. Business Snail. I don't remember that one. Oh, it's this one. Yep. I don't know why. I just realised I don't think I ever read the name of this snail. I just recognised it as the mustache snail. Whenever an ally snail dies, earn 1 gold and draw a card. Oh, no. Well, actually, yeah, but no. Okay, this used to be, as long as it was alive, all snails on the board and in your hand, in your deck, and blah, 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 would have +1 cost, +1 attack, and +1 health. So they'd be more expensive to play, but they'd be bigger. And you could obviously get around the more expensive to play by playing them before you play Business Snail, and you could still get the bigger stats while not having to pay the extra cost that way. That was like one of the only Snail Syndicate cards I liked. and I'm kind of sad to see it change. However, this does seem like a good effect for the Snails deck. It does feel like it's more in line with what it should be doing, I have to admit. Alright, well, I wouldn't usually do this, but just because we're looking at the Snail package right now, let's skip straight to Thundersnail's Rework. Thundersnail is a 1-cost token spell now instead of a 2-cost. Summon 4 different 1-cost snails from your dust pile. Trigger their magic, give them +1 attack, haste, and dodge 1. Ooh. So it's the same thing, but now they all come back with 1 extra attack, haste, and dodge 1. Oh, but haste! Oh, wait, hang on a minute. Have they, because, okay, dismount. Have they screwed with us here because, Snail. There used to be one that gave charge. Is that still in the game? Oh, I guess not. Yeah, again, I don't play Snail, so I haven't been keeping up to date. There was a 1-cost snail. I guess maybe it was the blue snail. Oh yeah, because it did give haste, so yeah, probably what used to be charge. There used to be one that would give all 1-cost snails charge, but it only counted 1-cost snails, which is how it was supposed to be balanced. And so, you know, the main reason you would use Thundersnail if you were running a snail deck was you would get a lot of charge burst damage by resurrecting a whole bunch of snails, giving them a bunch of attack, and then giving them all charge. But since it gives them haste, you can't give them charge anymore, but it looks like the charge card's gone anyway, so that's actually not a problem. Huh. I've got to say, I'm not sure about this Snail's deck. I'm probably going to need to play it to get a feel for it, because I genuinely don't know how you win with the Snail's deck. It feels like, oh yeah, obviously you use the Snail's energy to get bigger stats and then you win, but like every snail has like 1 or 2 health, and it feels like there's no way you ever get more than that. And like, I feel like, wouldn't you just fill your board with 4 snails, start attacking them, but then because you've got a full board you can't play anymore, and then because all your snails have like 1 to 2 attack, they're not killing the opponent fast enough. And then the opponent just wipes your board, plays an enormous thing, heals all the way up, and now it's too late in the game and you lose any... Like, I don't see how the snail deck wins, but I have to admit, a lot of these buffs do seem like quite good, but I don't see how the snail deck wins still, to be honest. Well anyway, getting off the snail deck, I'll have to play it myself soon, I guess. Give it a try. Shovels times 999 has finally been reworked. I'm fully behind this. So, if you didn't know, there was a bit of a exploit, I guess. I mean, I don't know, it might have been intentional, but either way, it kind of got annoying. So, basically, what this used to do is it used to be a 9-cost 9/9, and it used to put 99 shovels into your deck. But then, you had to draw them as fast as you could if you wanted them, because at the end of the turn, it would burn all shovels in your deck. Now that sounds like a pretty standard card, but you could probably guess there's a way to break that. Like, even when I first saw the card, I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's a way you can get around that whole burning the whole shovels thing somehow. And that people did. People used the new reworked Frisk to transform all those 99 shovels into random Undertale legendaries, and then at the end of the turn, when it tries to burn all the shovels, it can't burn them because they're not shovels anymore. So you would have a over 100 card deck filled with discounted legendaries. Now, this isn't quite as overpowered as some people thought. Some people seem to get the impression this is kind of like the be-all, end-all, this was the meta, this is the most overpowered thing. I think it's more just people did it because it was fun and it was clearly going to get, you know, patched out soon. Don't get me wrong, it works in ranked, but, I mean, personally, I only lost 1 game to that deck. Generally, I played a lot of games against that deck, and I won the vast majority of them, because just by running Soulless Chris, I actually outvalued them. The only way they could ever possibly win is if they managed to kill me with Fatigue, but because I was also running Snoelle and also running Muffet, both with a lot of shuffle effects, by the time I was taking Fatigue damage, it usually be close to the turn limit. And I didn't actually realise it's as early as turn 30. I thought it was something like turn 40 or 50, but it's turn 30 is the turn limit, and if you hit the turn limit, it's just a draw. Neither of you win or lose. So, yeah, they wouldn't really be able to get a win, because either they would lose before that point, or if they even ever got me to start, like, losing to mill, if I even ever got to that point, I'd be like 2 turns away from the turn limit, and if they didn't kill me super quick, we'd just draw anyway. So, yeah, gone off on a bit of tangent there, but yeah, having a full deck of Undertale legendaries is not that good overall. Or you don't have a lot of legendaries are built around having synergy, and you have no synergy because your whole deck is just random cards now, and all these cards are supposed to have all these great synergies, and you have no cards to work with them. As well as that, you don't get much draw. As well as that, yes, the legendaries are discounted, but like there's a whole bunch of them that are just straight up bricked. Like a great example is Grilling King, because it literally doesn't matter what your deck was before you used Frisk. If you get Grilling King off of Frisk, which, I mean, you got 100 legendaries, you probably got it, then it's literally useless, because you have to have less cards in your deck than in your dust pile, but now your deck is over 100 cards large. So, let's be real, you're not gonna have that happen by the end of the game. So, yeah, you're going to have a whole lot of dead cards, even if they are discounted, and a whole lot of cards that are going to get very minimal value, in contrast to, like, their actual potential, because of the fact that you have no real constructed deck anymore. You just have a pile of stuff. So, yeah, don't get me wrong, the Frisk deck could work. Sometimes you would just outvalue people. But I think overall the Frisk deck was mostly a meme, but I'm glad to see it patched out, because, God, it must be annoying if you are running a deck that would die to mill, and you're just like, oh, well, the enemy just played a card that gives them an infinite deck now. So, yeah. And to be fair, it wasn't a fun matchup. Even though I won most of the time, it wasn't a fun matchup with my Soulless Chris deck, because it was essentially, like, every game would be stalled to hell and back. Every game would go to, like, past turn 20 at least. It was a long one. So yeah, good to see that changed, and I think this new version is still absolutely fine. Fill both players' hands with shovels. If anything, I will admit this is probably going to be kind of annoying still, because that would force the enemy to burn a card, because when they start their turn they'll have a full hand and they wouldn't have had a chance to play the shovels yet. But yeah, you could still get big value off of that. I wonder if that's still like a good control card on its own, like without that synergy, or I guess we'll see. And then there's Snoelle. I hate to see it. I really hate to see it. So I'll say this: Snoelle is part of the current control-heavy meta, and I agree that the control-heavy meta needs to be changed. I don't think I agree that Snoelle was the card that needed to be nerfed. I don't know. I don't think this kills the card, to be fair. At the end of the day, it's still really strong, but I feel like now it's going to be so hard to stay alive in the early game with a Snoelle deck. Well, I say that. A Snoelle deck where you're actually trying to get your Snoelle as fast as possible. If you're just going to, like, the bottom of your deck, so you're going to get Snoelle eventually anyway, then, like, probably not, I guess. But yeah, if you're trying to play Snoelle early, I feel like you'll lose so much more gold now. So, yeah, I don't know, I like Snoelle. I like Snoelle as they are right now. I'm kind of sad to see them go up to 4, but they're probably still playable. I mean, again, I think all it does is it kicks them out of some decks where, like, you don't have the best early game tools to stay alive. Now you probably kick Snoelle out of those kind of decks. But if you can have a deck that does have enough anti-aggro to get through the early game without much problem and still wants to be a big value deck, then yeah, Snoelle's probably still your pick. Yeah, it's good. I think it's going to be fine. There's just going to be a couple decks that maybe cut her. I don't know though, because like, Soulless Chris was like definitely the stronger of the two kind of big control thing. Well, I say 2, 3 really, Muffet as well. Then again, they have changed Dark Fountain. I took a quick glance at this. Yeah, I kind of forgot they have nerfed Soulless Chris. It just doesn't say Soulless Chris because it's the artifact, not Soulless Chris themselves, that's got nerfed. Well, anyway, in terms of spells, we got some buffs. Mercenary High has gone from 6 to 5. Yeah, I need to... I'm not going to talk about this card yet, because I really need to look into what to do with it before I can really talk about it, and I don't think I should try and think of stuff off the top of my head. Silly Strings got buffed. I'm very glad to see that. This card... I saw potential in it just because, like, a lot of expensive spells seem to end up being pretty good unless they provide a super niche and, like, difficult to use effect. And this effect obviously isn't that niche. It's really nice. But, yeah, 12 was ridiculously expensive for a card like this. But you know, it's a good Noelle target. You know, to tutor out of your deck. I do like that about it. And I do think it's a very fun card, so I do hope it becomes more prevalent now it costs 10. But even at 10, I'll have to admit, I think this is like a little bit pricey. I don't know, I think the C's play at like 8 or 9. At 10, I mean, I don't know, maybe it could work at 10. It's just, if it drew the card that they put on top of your deck, that would actually be better, I think. But the fact that it doesn't, like, it's actually a rare case where I think the draw would help a card like this. Well, anyway, Create a Machine got, well, quite the buff, actually. Create a Machine now just lets you pick any thrashing part instead of giving you 3 random picks. This could be... I'm just thinking. I think that is really good. Now, I hesitated for a second there just because I'm like, a lot of the thrashing parts that are really good have been nerfed now. The body thing, the transparent one that dealt damage when it dies to the highest health monster, that used to be really goddamn annoying, and now it's actually just kind of meh. The obviously 1 cost 2/2 in the right situation used to be really good. As I said, the round body like thing, that one used to be really good in the right situation. So being able to get it at any time would be kind of scary. But now I must admit, we're kind of at a point where most of them aren't that scary. The ones that are scary are still the is it Tough Body? Yeah, Tough Body is still a little scary, but not like crazy, just a little bit scary. And is it something stupid like Flame of Love? This one, again, if you're already winning on board, is really hard to deal with and very scary because it's got a good amount of attack with dodge. And obviously it reduces the attack of stuff, so you're less likely to be able to get a good trade into it. So those two are the main ones that look scary off of this. I don't remember what the actually Thrash. I don't remember what the knife one is off the top of my head right now. It's not there. Yeah, I could have sworn the knife one isn't there. Is it just there because it's like cosmetic? Oh, it's because just a moment, blueprint. Yeah, I don't know why, but I forgot the thrashing machine uses the knife face. Yeah, that's just the thrashing machine. Alright then. And you can't get that off of the Create a Machine. Alright then. Yeah, so Create a Machine, that seems like a pretty scary buff, but it's not terrifying. I was very worried at first, but considering most of the most dangerous options seem to be nerfed at this point, I think that there's only a couple more options that look really scary off of it, and most of the scariest ones are the most expensive ones, so that's fair. Contamination received a small buff, which I don't really think changes anything. I think it just makes it slightly more in flavor and like actually makes sense in Perseverance by making it so that it gives things KR before it kills them, so you know it kind of makes sense in PV instead of being just a random no synergy with the soul card. Still, I gotta say, I still don't like what they've done with Contamination. I mean, I fully get it, the old Contamination was too strong, but like, ugh, this Contamination, I don't like it. And the worst part is, I feel like if it wasn't in Perseverance, I'd like it. Like, I feel like, I mean, obviously in Justice, this is probably way too good. But like, what am I trying to... What would be a good one to put it in, I guess? I don't know, Bravery. I know they've got a decent amount of kind of haste stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like Perseverance isn't the soul for this card. Like, this card probably... I genuinely think this card's super good in most of the souls. I think it's just Perseverance. It's like... You know, usually you've got... Like, Perseverance seems to specialize in having big stuff on the board and snowballing that big stuff by using KR. And if you've got big stuff on the board, then you don't actually have these little things that just ping things to get them damaged but not kill them, and then finish them off with Contamination. You're not really using it correctly at that point. But those are all the spells. And finally, Artifact. Prosperity. It has been changed so that whenever you play a monster, you heal 1 health for every 4 gold it costs. Is that different? Does it say here? Alright, so I reread this effect a couple more times over afterwards, and I've figured out, I think, what the difference is now. 2 differences, actually. So I did actually pretty quickly realise after I said that, oh wait, the cap is gone. It used to be that you couldn't get any more healing if it cost more than 12. You would just get 3. Even if it cost like 20, you would still only get 3. And for that reason, I almost said something, but then I thought, wait, no, I still don't get it though, because that would be a buff, and it's like labelled as a rework, not a buff. It took me a while to realise why this isn't labelled as a straight up buff. I was starting to think maybe it's just a mistake. However, I think that before it worked off of base cost. Well, actually, I'm sure before it worked off of base cost. And the way this is worded, I think it won't work off of base cost anymore. So that is actually a nerf to it, especially kind of sucks for me because in the Patience deck I purposely had a decent amount of 4 drops and 8 drops because, you know, they're like right on the threshold where I still get the amount of healing even though it's, you know, not that expensive. So that's gonna mess with me. Well, oh well, it's a justified nerf. If anything, I was expecting more to the nerf on Prosperity, but I'm not complaining. I like that Prosperity is good right now. I will say, I think that 1 health for every 4 gold is a bit too nice, maybe. I mean, I do really like it as an artifact, but personally I would say 1 health for every 5 gold is fine. I know that's what it was before, but before it wouldn't give you multiple healing if it was 10 or 15, and now it would. Dark Fountain has received a rework, which is really just a nerf, but I mean, I'm not complaining because Dark Fountain was kind of stupid. So for anyone who wasn't aware, Dark Fountain is the artifact that Soulless Chris gives you just for playing it, and if you have played 20 or more unique cards that turn, it would just make it so at the start of every turn, every single empty slot in your hand would be filled with random Deltarune cards that cost 2 less. Which was, well, it was problematic. Mostly just because, you know, it's not necessarily that random Deltarune cards with discounts are that good. It's more you have a literal infinite supply of them. You know, if you can get someone to the late game, unless you get really consistently unlucky with your pulls, you literally have infinite value. So yeah, that's pretty spooky. So this rework is pretty, like, sensible as far as I'm concerned. I'm fully behind this. Like, even though I think this is just straight up a nerf, I will say that this doesn't feel like a nasty nerf. I think this feels very reasonable in my opinion. So the condition is still the same. Whenever you play a card that hasn't been played this game, gain a counter, max 20. When this reaches 20 counters, this is where it changes. Add 20 random Deltarune monsters, max epic, to your deck. And turn start, if this has 20 counters, draw 2 cards and reduce their cost by 2. So, now, you can't get legendaries, you can't get TT, I don't think you could get DTs anyway, but maybe you could. If you could, that's stupid, and I'm so glad you can't anymore. But you can't get legendaries is the main point, which yeah, I'm a little bit sad about, but I fully understand it, because yeah, if you get the right legendary at the right time, just by complete luck, that's got to be really annoying. But more importantly is the fact it's not infinite anymore. You just get 20. Now I say just 20. 20 is like still like nearly doubling the size of your deck. And as well as that, you don't get an infinite source of card draw either. You get 2 extra per turn. Now, that's really good in my opinion as well, because that's about on average, if you're trying to empty your hand as fast as possible, about how many cards. You'd be playing about 3 every turn. Now, sometimes you'll have a turn where you get 4 or 5 down or whatever, but then because your board is clogged and the opponent might not kill them all straight away, you literally won't have the board space a lot of the time, even if you have the gold, to play enough to continuously drop like 4 or 5 cards per turn. So that meant that, yeah, I think that even with these changes, S-Chris is probably still really good. Like, I mean, I hope that this does lead to a meta change where they don't become, like, they're not the best anymore, but this does mean that, like, I don't think the card's going to be dead after this nerf at all, because it's still 3 cards per turn, and yes, now you can eventually run out of value, but again, turn limit exists. I don't think you'll be running out long before the turn limit. And there is one thing that's technically better about this version. Well, I say one thing, one significant thing. There is like really small stuff, like, oh, if you have stuff that interacts with the deck, now that it puts the cards in the deck instead of just conjuring them from the ether, it now means that, like, obviously you can summon them from the deck or whatever, or with certain effects. But more important than that is this now reduces the cost of whatever you draw from your deck by 2. Not just the Deltarune monsters you got, so you can actually get the significant high synergy cards in your deck that you want to have to be discounted instead of just the trash, which is really nice. Anyway, that was this patch. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, I'll try and get some more videos out soon, but you know, I want to find a deck that's interesting to talk about before I do that. But I'll see you in the next one.